Number five on my list is Late Night with the Devil. A live
Yeah.
broadcast of a late night talk show in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms. David Dalmatian. I kind of remember him since The Dark Knight. He was one of Heath Ledger's cronies in that movie, and he was very small role in that movie, but he's something that stands out just because he has a certain type of face. I don't know what it is, but he has a very memorable face. And even though it was such a small part and he doesn't really have very many lines, when you see him in the movie, you already know that he is utterly insane. Like you could already tell that this guy is a little off of his rocker, and he communicates that very fast. David Dalmatian has been doing these small parts and standing out in movies for a long time. Every time I see him, it's that guy. It's that guy. He's always good.
Yeah.
Finally got a leading role, and man, he just completely nailed it. I think he's likable. I think that you he's a convincing talk show host for a 1970s television program. And I know I wasn't born in the 70s, but I'm familiar with that programming and I've seen 70s talk shows. I think it kind of nails the vibe very well.
Yeah.
I really happy to see him in a breakout moment. Like he's always been very impressive in whatever he's been in. And I think it was about time that he got a leading role in a movie so he could show audiences what he's capable of and to show that he can carry an entire movie and he can carry it very well. Um, Late Night with the Devil is one of those ones where it's like obviously it's a much bigger budget than Milk and Cereal, but it's one of those movies where it's kind of surprises you because it doesn't feel like a low budget movie to me at all.
No.
Only when you actually look back on it that you realize they never really leave that set. The whole thing takes place on the same set and then some stuff backstage, which is just an extension of the set. But because of the format, because you feel like you're watching television, because you feel like the dips into surrealism that it goes, especially as it starts careening towards its climax, so creatively done. And there's moments that make you laugh, there's moments that scare you, there's moments that surprise you. It's so entertaining that when it's over, you forget that you spent the entire time in one room and you feel like you've had a full bodied experience with the movie. It feels a lot bigger than it actually is. Very colorful sets, very eye popping, and it's just a testament to how much you can do with such limited means and resources.
Yeah, and the climax was pretty scary on a large scale. Like it got pretty big at the end, but they didn't have to show it. It's all in your imagination.
They allude to his past as being a member of the Grove, an elite California camp for wealthy and powerful men. And you get the feeling that a lot of the evil in this movie comes from that. That's a real place. That's where a lot
Uh,
of elite and powerful people actually go. George W. Bush has been the Bushes have been members. Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, presidents, very powerful people, and it's very controversial. There's been people who have broken in and filmed them, and they do cult like stuff in there, and a lot of powerful people gather there every so often, and they have the owl, which is actually their occult symbol that they have.
and that's one of the great little touches that makes the movie special to me because it they could have very well leaned on just a possessed little girl comes on this talk show, but then they kind of expanded into it being this cult type of thing.
Yeah, um, I think it's probably one. Would you call it a possession movie?
Technically, yeah, just like I would call it, it's also technically a found footage documentary style movie, but I wouldn't actually call it a found footage movie.
I almost described it when I first mentioned it on my list, a found footage film, but that's not accurate. And I think that's what makes it so original is that it's a possession film, but it's hard to describe it as a possession film. It's a found footage film. It's hard to describe it as a found footage film, but it is very much falls into those genres. And it manages to be a part of the possession and the found footage genres without ever feeling like it's actually a part of those genres because it approaches it in such a fresh way. And
Yeah,
personally, what's my thing with possession movies is that I think that's kind of a played out genre, if I'm being honest.
yeah,
In a lot of possession movies, like when I see them, they're coming out, I kind of roll my eyes because I feel like for the most part, they all do like an Exorcist knockoff 90% of movies of possession movies are an Exorcist knockoff, and every time I watch them, I just feel like I'm watching another watered down version of a classic film. That if I really wanted to, I could just throw on The Exorcist. If I really wanted to experience a good version of this
Yeah.
actually is one of the rare possession films that takes it in a unique direction that doesn't feel like you're watching another Exorcist ripoff. And it's another thing. You mentioned Ghostwatch earlier. You expected it to be more like that. It's heavily influenced by Ghostwatch, and you could see it, but it's not really like Ghostwatch. It's influenced by all of these different things, yet it feels like none of them at all. It kind of finds its own unique voice amongst very familiar tropes that we've seen dozens of times before.
Well, it's just because Ghostwatch commits to the realism more, and they never break the illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Where at first on Late Night with the Devil, I didn't like how they broke the illusion and had the black and white footage in between showing what was going on behind the scenes. But when I watched it again, when I took out that expectation and watched it with fresh eyes, then I understood it kind of added a lot to the story, showing the behind the scenes stuff in between.
I think it fills the characters out a little bit more. I think
Yeah.
I think you could probably have made this movie a little bit scarier by deleting the behind the scenes elements that take place between which you would say is like because it's set up like a TV show, I guess. These behind the scenes elements take place when there would normally be a commercial break on television. I think that you could have added to the realism and made it a little scarier by taking that out. But I also think you would have sacrificed a lot of character development and a lot of you understand the complexities of the relationships of everybody on the set a lot better with all of that. You understand the relationship between between Jack Delroy, that's David Dalmatian's character, and the character of June. You would have never understood their relationship just by watching them. Um, the magician skeptic played by Ian Bliss. All of these very unique characters that come together give they're enriched, I think, by having all of that behind the scenes footage.
Well, what I noticed on the second watch is that even though it didn't commit to the realism the same as Ghostwatch did, I was left with this very similar sense of dread.
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't dampen the effectiveness of it for me. I still felt that same sense of dread, like, oh shit, the evil has escaped at the end, you know.
Yeah, and I think that the as the movie goes on, it becomes more surreal and it starts dipping more into like straight nightmarish imagery. And I think it's an excellent climax too. And it's also a way to like hide the fact that this movie is not as high budget as it looks. And I actually got to see this in a theater, which was a really cool experience because it plays out like a TV show with an audience and the laugh track and stuff that when you see it in a movie theater, you almost feel like you're part of the audience watching.
Oh, okay, I could see that.
So that was the cool part of getting to see it on the big screen. Was feeling like I was in the audience of Late Night with the Devil. It kind of enhanced the experience, especially with the surround sound. You turn around and like you forget you're not an audience member on on the show.
And if anybody watching out there has only seen it once, I definitely suggest seeing it again because you definitely catch more things the second time that you didn't catch the first time.
So it's creepy. It's very well acted. It takes a premise, a very low budget premise, and expands upon it in ways that makes it look bigger than it is. It's creative. It's very entertaining. That's another thing. If nothing else, it's a very entertaining movie through the entire runtime. Takes some interesting twists and turns, and it feels completely different from anything that we've had in the horror genre recently, while paying homage and having elements that are very familiar to all horror fans. All around, Late Night with the Devil to me is just one of the standout horror films of 2024. I love it. I think it's an excellent movie.
And it had just the right amount of comedy elements to me too, but it was comedy that arose from the character interactions. They weren't telling a bunch of jokes. It was just genuinely funny.
Yeah. So, Late Night with the Devil, definitely one of the best horror movies of the year, one of the most inventive horror movies of the year. And I actually think it was kind of worthy of all of the hype that it received online.
And a cool experience for me. I like when There's certain things that I don't enjoy about the movie on the first watch, and then I get a whole new experience on the second time. So that was pretty rewarding for me.
Cool.
I'm glad I watched it again before we did the list.
I know what you mean. So how are we doing the next one? Who's doing number 4 next? Is it me or
Uh,
you?
I'll do number four.
Okay. What's your number 4?
Yeah, because you haven't done your four yet, right?
Nope.
So okay, so I'll do mine and you do yours. So my number four is Maxine from Ty West. This is the one that was down below Long Legs, and Long Legs was ahead of this one. But I watched both of them again. I ended up loving Maxine even more on a second watch.
I'm
So
really
this one,
surprised this came up above Long Legs for you.
this one really held up. It's that second watch that was really special for me because the first watch I was too wrapped up in the other two, comparing it to the other two because it's completely different from them. It's a little more campy than the other two.
And X and Pearl.
Yeah, but damn, it's so well written, and the editing, the acting, everything was so great about it. And then just watching it a second time, I can tell this is going to be one that I might watch even more than Pearl. I think Pearl is a better film, but I ended up liking Maxine more than Pearl because it was
Really?
just so fun and so in your face and so every
It's
story
more
beat.
like it has a more rewatchable quality to it.
Yeah, every story beat made me feel something, and it was so many elements about it that made it good. I think uh, Pearl was more stripped down. There was less elements to play with, but he did it excellent, and it was a really good movie. But this one was just more fun, more of a fun watch. Written and directed by Ty West. This is one of my favorite writer directors of all time. He did House of the Devil, Cabin Fever 2, which I like even more than the first one. He did The Innkeepers, The Sacrament, In the Valley of Violence, a western that he did with Ethan Hawke. I love Ethan Hawke. And he did TV from 2016 to 2022, which included the great episode of The Exorcist TV show, which is better than the new movie. Then this great trilogy, and he also did a great episode of the show of the TV show Them. It stars Mia Goth again, who was in. You still there?
I'm still here. I'm still here.
Okay, your video went out.
I know.
Okay, so it stars Mia Goth, Kevin Bacon. Fucking love Kevin Bacon in this movie. Giancarlo Esposito, Gus from Breaking Bad. Elizabeth Debicki plays the producer. Bobby Cannavale and Michelle Monaghan. I love both of their performances with cameos by Halsey. Sophie Thatcher was also in another movie that's on my list, uh, uh, Strange Darling. And also Lily Collins, Phil Collins' daughter, and Larry Fessenden, the director. He makes a cameo in this. The synopsis: 1980s Hollywood. Adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minks finally gets her big break. However, as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Los Angeles, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. And I love the little additions he does. Like, you remember in X when Maxine breaks up the cocaine with a piece of cardboard and snorts it with a $2 bill? Or in this one, she cuts the cocaine with a SAG membership card and snorts it with a $100 bill. So little touches like that I loved. Excellent casting choices, and their appearances in the movie are just perfection. There's this little I got excited every time a new character would appear. Like Kevin Bacon seems to appear at just the right time. Uh, Bobby Cannavale and Michelle Monaghan seem to appear at just the right time. And I want to see a movie with just at least more movies with Bobby Cannavale and Michelle Monaghan as cops. I just love them the choice of those two as the cops.
They're dynamic.
Um, yeah, and this movie felt like my 80s, like an authentic 80s. It's not retro 80s like Stranger Things or something, because I realized after watching it that it was filmed with equipment that was only available in 1985. So that's another touch that Ty West added to add to the authenticity of it. Um, I love the scene where she absolutely nails her audition because we already know from X that Maxine is actually an excellent actress. So she nails this audition, and you're sitting there basking in the glow of her performance, like, wow, this chick is really good. And then the producer says, "Okay, can you take your top off?"
We can
That
see.
kind of sets the tone for the whole movie, and then bam, ZZ Top. That's my '80s right there.
So
And
what
then
if you don't mind me adding, what you mentioned, like you said, this is your '80s.
yes,
What I liked about this as a period piece, as opposed to most films about the '80s, I want to compare to a very odd comparison to a movie like Straight Outta Compton.
uh,
Okay, Straight Outta Compton also takes place in LA in the '80s, and it is about a very gritty topic. It's about NWA. It's about the fucking first gangster rap group. And NWA, they're from like the streets of Compton and LA. And in the '80s, at the time when NWA came out, very like gritty LA. LA was a lot different. It wasn't as clean as it is now. There's a very dirty side to LA. And Straight Outta Compton made it look too glossy. It's too Hollywood looking. I like Straight Outta Compton. I think it's probably, I'm not really big on biopics, music biopics, and I think that's one of the better ones. But Maxine, strangely, nails the look that I think Straight Outta Compton should have had. It makes LA feel dirty and gritty and lived in. It feels like an LA of the 1980s, and it doesn't feel like it's doing it for a nostalgic throwback either. And I like the soundtrack of this movie because it has 80 songs that you don't really hear that often, because most of the time when they do like 80s movies and they try to do like the retro thing, you ever notice that they always pick like new wave sounding songs? I don't know how to describe it, like Tears for Fears style stuff. And that's
yeah,
all 80s music. But that's not the kind of 80s music that I grew up on. It's not what I heard. I heard more of like the Mary Jane Girls and stuff like that. And this movie has music that my mom listened to growing up, because my mom was a big club girl in the 80s, and I recognized the music, and I'd be hearing it. I'm like, these are not like typical songs that I hear in 80s film. Like this comes closer, even though I didn't live through the 80s, it comes closer to my idea of what the 80s is, and to the 80s music that I grew up hearing. Not just the cliches, not just hearing Michael Jackson and Prince and Madonna and all of these other people, and hearing Tears for Fears and all that new wave stuff. It actually felt like, I don't know how to put it, but it's the type of music that's regional, like the type of music that would have been
yeah.
popular in LA clubs specifically, maybe not across the rest of the United States. But I love that about the movie. I love the way that the alley looks authentic, and I like that the music choices are authentic 80s songs, but 80s songs I don't hear, and 80s songs that are accurate to the region.
Yeah, the deep cut '80s. That's what I
Yes.
liked. Like it, I won't give any details to the scene, but there's an epic beatdown of Kevin Bacon to the tune of St. Elmo's Fire. And St. Elmo's Fire, I don't like the movie that much, but that song was one of my favorite songs of the '80s. So they're blasting St. Elmo's Fire while Kevin Bacon's getting his ass beat. I was overjoyed watching that scene. So especially because Kevin Bacon sets a tone of his character as being so skeevy and nasty, and you just want to see this happen to him, and all of a sudden it's just happening. St. Almost Fire blasting. It was just, oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
And
No, like that too. Yeah, it just felt like an authentic version of the 80s. It felt like an 80s from somebody who actually lived through it and is not just going off of the pop culture nostalgia that you normally see for the 80s.
yeah, and just the right amount of existing footage of the time, like intertwining the news stories about the Night Stalker, kind of making you think uh, the killer is the Night Stalker. And even when you realize the killer's not the Night Stalker, it's almost like the movie's trying to convince the characters in the movie that it's the Night Stalker killing these people. And then it's got the giallo flavor with the black gloved killer, and the aesthetic of some of the scenes looks very giallo as well. Like when the black,
Heavily Dario Argento influenced.
yeah. especially the scene where the killer, the Black Club killer, goes to see the Maxine in the Peep Show.
Mhm.
I love the lighting in that one. I love the close ups of the glove and everything as he's gripping like he's pissed off that she's dancing like that. You know.
The
Uh,
plot is also very authentic to Giallo. I don't think we should spoil how it ends up, but all of
yeah,
the Giallo movies have like like a very like depraved form of sexuality seems to drive the plot. There's a lot of a lot of these characters have like weird sexual hangups, and
yeah.
that's kind of carried over into the plot of Maxine. So it's not just the aesthetics; it's some of the themes of the movie are very giallo. Oh, and by the way, really quick, that song I was talking about earlier, "In My House" by the Mary Jane Girls, that's a
Oh
song.
yes.
Yeah, like when I first heard that, I was like, I just had to go back to that because I know the name of it. And I first heard that, I was like, I can't believe that they're actually using this song in an '80s movie like
Yeah.
that like that right there towards the beginning, just the use of that song, which is something I grew up hearing in my house all the time, already made. I was like, okay, I'm in for something a little bit more authentic than your normal '80s period piece shit you get.
And even the editing felt authentically 80s. It was this very flashy, music filled editing that felt like the 80s. So, but it also had a modern feel to it at the same time. I can't explain exactly why, but it felt like editing that would be in a movie like this in the 80s, but it also felt modern. But it's very flashy. You used a lot of news clips and stuff like that, and a lot of it was driven by the music, but it all worked so well.
Mhm.
And I loved in this one how people actually see something in Maxine and they're on her side. The producer, her agent, played by Giancarlo Esposito, the star of the movie, the movie within a movie, Lily Collins, her friend at the video store, and even the cop. Everyone's on her side, and I love how the cops are. They kind of think that she's the killer,
Mhm.
so they kind of focus on her. And then that one moment that was so impactful for me when she comes up and she tries to see what's going on, and then she sees the sheet lifted off her dead friend, and just her reaction immediately convinces the cops, okay, she didn't do it, but she can help us get this killer.
I
I
think
love that moment.
what's great about that is that Maxine in these movies is always seen as tough and a badass, and she does something very shocking towards the beginning of this movie that I won't spoil, but something that like when I saw in theaters, it had people squirming and screaming
Yeah.
in the theater. And you see a very tough exterior. You never see her vulnerability, and I think that's the most vulnerable that she's been in this trilogy so far. Is like, oh, you can see that there's actually a heart there for like somewhere that's not just pure. Because I always wondered, is Maxine a decent person, or does she have any feeling? Because she's so ambitious and so driven and ruthless, as they even say in
Yeah.
the movie. She's very ruthless. That it's you forget that there's a human being underneath that. For a while, all you see is the greed, the ambition, the drive, the relentless dedication, which could be which is a good thing for your career, but it also produces toxic personality traits in real life.
But I love seeing so many people on her side, and she still wanted to go do things herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like she could have had any number of characters help her go after this killer and plead with them to help her in some way, but she wanted to go do it herself. She marched into the lion's den, fearless. I love that part of it. Um, I completely nerded out on the chase through the Universal backlot up to the Psycho House. It kind of called back the uh, some of the stuff from X, and it ends with the producer telling her squash whatever's distracting you, and she goes, "I into this was very 80s too." The the producer tells her you need to squash whatever's distracting you and have your head in this movie. She says, "I intend to," and then it launches into this very uh, kind of cheesy prepare for battle.
It's almost
Uh,
like the eye of the tiger moment.
yeah, this prepare for battle montage. Completely nerded out on that. I think it worked so well. Another thing that's very retro, very 80s, but didn't scream this is retro. Um, I love how the ending goes completely wacky. This story gets pretty crazy at the end, and it gets a little more campier than you realize it's going to, but it still
I
has its moments of heaviness and drama. That's what I loved about it.
I think that's where the movie loses a lot of people, and I think that's the most common complaint that I've heard about the movie is the ending, and a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people like the twist or buy it or are into it because it goes a little bit. It's more far fetched than anything that happens in X
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's another thing that was so 80s for me. It's so authentically 80s. 80s movies went completely zany and wacky in the third act, like
That's
that.
very true.
So I thought it was a great sequel. Amazing use of the first film. The first film, X made several appearances in this one. It's clever. It's well written. Just the right amount of drama. Great supporting cast. An authentic 80s vibe. Put this right up toward the top of my list at number 4 because I'm going to be watching this one many more times.
So this was my top 10. This was my number 9. It was still on my top 10. I love this one. I think it's awesome. My only thing is that like out of the trilogy, I think it's probably the weakest of the trilogy as a film, as a piece of filmmaking. I think X is still the best one. And I think that like Pearl has this very I don't know how to call it, but it's a very psychological quality in terms of the way that it gets under your skin. This one I don't think is as good, but the thing is, those are sky high expectations, and the fact that this movie is not, to me, is not as good as the first two, but it doesn't distract from the quality of the movie and it doesn't lessen the movie. I think it speaks to how strong this trilogy is as a whole, that every movie stands out on its own. I do think, though, this is, I think, probably that's one weakness compared to the other two. I think X and Pearl could be enjoyed independently without the rest of the movies. I think this one really, out of the three, this one really depends on you having seen X and Pearl in order for it to have the most impact, especially X, but Pearl too to an extent. I feel like it's the one that relies most on the trilogy, on it being a trilogy.
Well, especially after watching Maxine for a second time, I feel like all three of them is one huge experience
Mm-hmm.
because they're all so wildly different
Mm-hmm.
and all so great for what they are. To for me, because I did the same thing. I compared them as I went along, and I thought the same thing after watching it the first time. I didn't like it as much as the first two. It's the weakest of the three, but it's still so good. And
Mm-hmm.
then after watching it again, I liked it even more than Pearl. And I think it's because every one of them are so wildly different that you can't help but compare them. But it's almost not fair for me to compare them
So,
because they're each so great for what they are, and
yeah.
and you know.
So yeah, I do like Maxine a lot. I already bought it too on 4K. Um, but this is I guess is just to illustrate the difference in terms of how I reacted to X and Pearl compared to how I reacted to this. This made my top 10, definitely one of the best horror movies of the year. But in 2022, my number one horror movie of the year was X, and my number two horror movie of the year was Pearl. They both took my
Uh,
top two slots that year.
yeah, this what a groundbreaking trilogy.
Yeah,
Like it's. I'm hard pressed to find a trilogy better than that one.
me too, especially in the horror genre.
Yeah.
So now we go to my number four. My number four is Robert Eggers' Nosferatu.
Mm.
And I've seen this one about 3 or 4 times, so this is the one I've seen the most out of any of the movies on my list because I ended up showing it to other people. This is everybody already knows Nosferatu. You already gave a good kind of outline of what it is a little earlier. This is the third version of Nosferatu. The first one, F.W. Murnau's version from 1922, I believe. I believe it was 1922. The second one is from 1979, Werner Herzog, and in 2024, Robert Eggers gives us the third version. And I think they are all genuinely great films. Nosferatu is one of those special stories that I feel like you could remake it, but only certain directors can touch it. You have
Yeah.
to have a certain sensibility, you have to have a certain style. It's not for everyone. It's interesting. Nosferatu is just basically Dracula. It's just a
Mm.
hyper specific version of Dracula. I feel like anybody could do Dracula. Dracula's endlessly reinterpretable, and Nosferatu is just one example of how you could keep reinterpreting Dracula. But if you want to do this specific version, you have to have a certain quality as a filmmaker if you want to do Nosferatu justice. And boy, does Robert Eggers do this story justice. It was a passion project of his. He's wanted to make a remake of Nosferatu ever since he saw it as a kid. Very big budget movie, especially in comparison to like The Witch and The Lighthouse. And it shows on the screen. I think the sets, the way that it recreates 1830s Germany, the way that it looks, the Europe, the cinematography. I think this is fantastic looking film. A fantastic
Yeah.
film all around. I think it should have won the Oscar for best cinematography.
I thought it was for sure.
Yeah, I had a feeling it wasn't just because I was like they're gonna give it to like one of the bigger budget blockbusters, but I think this should have won the Oscars for best cinematography because this is probably just purely the most beautiful, up there with I Saw the TV Glow. Well, more on the spoiler, fuck, more on that later. But those are like the two most yeah aesthetically impressive horror movies I saw this year. And man, like all the nighttime scenes. What did you say earlier that they took out the colors?
Yeah, they took out all red and yellows.
I could totally see that. And they for anybody who's familiar with silent movies, there's this impression that silent films are like black and white because that's what our culture associates with old movies is black and white. And the reality is that if you go back and watch silent films, they're not actually in black and white. They're all
Mm.
tinted in very strange colors. Sometimes they're in sepia blues or oranges, but all these very solid blocky colors. And I think Nosferatu achieves that look in all of its nighttime sequences. That it, even though like it's not really the same type of cinematography, but it feels like at the nighttime sequences they're borderline black and white, but they have like this bluish grayish tone to it, and it's very reminiscent of what silent films actually look like. It really nails the look, the expressionism, um totally like the way that the hand, I especially love the hand, the way that the Nosferatu's hand extends like a shadow, and
Yeah.
all he has to do is reach across and his hand, the shadow just extends itself and goes over towns, cities, it goes into houses, it can open doors and everything, and it really captures that authentic look. And there are no other filmmakers that I think really know how to do a period piece in this day and age as well as Robert Eggers. He's proven 4 times in a row that he is dedicated to the authenticity of any period that he chooses to cover, and Nosferatu is no different. Lily Rose Depp, fantastic in this movie. Phil,
Yeah.
like you described earlier when you touched on when you touched on the movie. Um, uh, Ale- what am I saying? Uh, Al- Alexander Skarsgård is Bill Skarsgård, right?
Bill Skarsgård. Yeah.
Yeah. Bill Skarsgård is Nosferatu in this is fucking amazing. I think it's an even better performance than Pennywise. That voice of his, that powerful voice, the way that he drags his words out. I love the way he says things. The midnight hour has passed, and like has a very like ancient feel to it. And I love the way that Nosferatu is filmed. Is you never see him like close up for a while. You like see him as a shadow. You see him in the distance. You see the close-ups at his hands, and even when you're looking at him in the early scenes when he's sitting at his dinner table, you can't really see his face. You could
Yeah.
only kind of like somewhat make out a little bit, but you could see his hands, you could see the way that he moves, the way that he floats, how he's on one side of the room and the next he's right behind you pouring you a drink. He really sells the ancient old world powerful qualities of Nosferatu. And when you finally do see him, he does have the porn stash. But it's accurate because Dracula
Yeah.
is based on Vlad the Impaler. That is the inspiration for Dracula, who was a prince of Wallachia, who used to torture his enemies and used to put at his little castle that he had. When you approached it, it would scare people away because there would be people on spikes, like people out in front, like kind of like a warning. There'd be like human beings on spikes out in front,
Yeah.
and there kind of like was rumors, and there kind of like grew a mythology that grew around him that he actually drank blood, and that is the inspiration for Dracula. And Nosferatu is just a form of Dracula. So he has the Vlad the Impaler stash, which is very accurate, and he gives off an air of nobility to him as well. There's a sense of royalty that he comes from a long line of royalty, and he even gets offended when he's not addressed properly. He's your lord. You will address me as your lord. Um, I think it's going to be an iconic performance. I think as the years go by, the porn stash controversy is going to seep into the background, and no one's going to care anymore. I think it's eerie. I think it's beautiful. I think the acting is incredible across the board. There's not one weak performance in this. Willem Dafoe is fucking hilarious in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's a deathly serious movie, but he brings the humor. And his line read, I think the best line he gives is like, I have seen things that would have made Isaac Newton crawl back up his mother's womb. His zany, yeah, iconic right there. Like all of
Yeah.
the things that fly out of his mouth, his zaniness for as a kind of version of Van Helsing. Everything about his performance works. Everything about Rose Depp works. Aaron Taylor Johnson is great. Bill Skarsgård is great. Not a single Nicholas Hoult is really good. A much better version of the character than Keanu Reeves did in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh yeah.
Much stronger. And it's just a beautiful fucking movie. It is just so gorgeous to look at. It is such a joy and a delight just to see one of the most beautiful horror movies I've ever seen, right up there with the original two Nosferatu movies. Yeah, I love Nosferatu. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think the only thing that makes it not quite as effective as a horror movie compared to The Witch and The Lighthouse. Those are scarier movies to me, especially The Witch. I think The Witch is a much scarier film than
Yeah.
Nosferatu. But I think what it lacks in terms of scariness, it makes up for in just terms of sheer beauty. And just, I loved it. It's just a great
And
movie.
a very clear depiction of Nosferatu's power and influence.
Oh, yeah.
The way kind of you can almost see his power spread through the city, and you can feel it
Mm-hmm.
with all the elements from his voice to the music to the look of the film and to the rats. You just feel his influence like saturate this city.
The plague imagery. And this is
Yeah.
what I like about this is it embraces the romantic elements, like the gothic romantic elements of Dracula and the gothic romantic elements of vampires, without making the vampire himself like attractive or handsome or anything like that. He's fucking gross and disgusting. And when you actually like see him like feasting on blood, there's like something very animalistic to it. And it's a very sexually charged performance where the character of Nosferatu comes across as very sexual,
Yeah.
not sexy.
Yeah. And the biting of the chest. Oh, it hurt. It just
Yeah.
made my chest hurt looking at it.
But it's a gorgeous piece of filmmaking, and it just proves to me that I think that Robert Eggers is probably the best filmmaker of the past 10, 15 years. Of the new generation of filmmakers, I think he is the one that is the most talented, the most consistent. And this is just another notch in his belt. Like 4 movies in a row, not one of them is anything less than excellent, than fantastic. And the fact that this might be the weakest of his horror movies is insane because it's an excellent film. That only speaks to what a talent this guy is, that his
Yeah.
weakest horror film is still one of the best horror movies of the year and miles above everything else. And it still probably will become a classic anyway.
Well, it's my least favorite of all his films, but it's still one of my favorite horror films of the year. That shows just like with Ty West with his trilogy, it shows how great his filmography is.
Mm-hmm. And
And I saw some people complaining about Lily Rose Depp about how far she went over the top with her performance. I didn't see it as over the top. I thought she had a very genuine connection with the material, and then I didn't know till afterwards that she used some kind of technique where she almost hypnotizes herself. Like she forgets she's on a movie set, and that's why he called her feral.
Mm.
Because she forgets she's on a movie set. She forgets she's doing a movie, and she so immerses herself in the material that she was really feeling what she was feeling. And while I was watching her, normally you would think that's an actress going over the top, but no, I felt the emotions that she was feeling because it was so visceral.
Well, she's possessed.
Yeah,
I don't
so
understand. Like,
realistically possessed. That's
yeah,
how you would act if you were possessed.
the performance is very reminiscent of Isabella Johnny in Possession,
Yes.
like that really go for it, that feral quality. And from what I understand, that was an influence on the movie. And the moment where she has her breakdown and she's becoming very feral, it even is very reminiscent of the scene of Isabella and Johnny breaking down underneath. I think it was like in the tunnel in Possession when she
Yeah.
down. Very reminiscent of that. And what's funny is Isabella Johnny, who was a big influence on this performance, actually played the same character in Werner Herzog's Nosferatu
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
in 1979. So it's an homage to an actress who also played her character, but a different performance. They're paying homage to.
And Robert Eggers was always, since his first film, has been a director to watch for me, and this one just solidified that. Like if this was what he done with Nosferatu, I can't wait to see what else he does.
And Nosferatu, it's a movie that gets better upon rewatches too.
Mm.
I think it's because originally it was going to be on my top 10, but it was going to be low. It wasn't going to crack my top five. But after seeing it a couple more times, I'm like, oh no, this movie is phenomenal. It's fantastic. Um, yeah, I loved it. Just a great
And
vampire movie too.
every one of his movies you have to own on the highest quality possible medium.
Oh yeah, I bought it on 4K. I had to hunt for it too because it was sold out everywhere really quick. That just shows you
Oh
the
damn.
demand for it. Like I know that they had like in Walmart and like on Amazon and online everywhere. The 4Ks of that movie just were snapped up so fast. You had to kind of hunt for it to find them. I'm pretty sure it's easier to find now that the initial sales rushes died off, but it was hard to find.
I love how the audience reacted to this, how it was so much more of a success than they thought. I was so proud. I was like, yes, finally a really good director entering the mainstream.
And it still has the qualities that his indie movies have. The qualities
Yeah,
of his indie films great. So
because
yeah.
he keeps that authenticity to the time, to the region, to the story. And
Yeah.
that the mustache thing, it distracted me for like exactly 5 seconds. And I was like, okay, this is Nosferatu's look. The only reason it jars you because you're so used to the classic
Max Shrek.
pointy eared bald Max Shrek, you know.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, if you want to see that, you can always go back and watch the original Nosferatu.
There you go.
If you want a more modernized take on that, go watch Herzog's Nosferatu because Herzog's Nosferatu is more faithful to the look of the FW Murnau version. But either way, all three of them are phenomenal movies, and it would make very long but a great triple feature.
Yeah, I still got to watch the Joe Bob episode where he did both the first two Nosferatu movies. I got to watch that one.
One of the best episodes of The Last Drive-In.
Oh, nice.
Seeing those back to back. So yeah, number 4, Nosferatu.
All right, that brings us to my number 3. My number 3 is Strange Darling. As
My
you
number
said,
7.
yep, you're number 7, and this was directed by J.T. Molnar. This was his second feature after Outlaws and Angels in 2016. And I'm looking forward to a new one coming up. He wrote a new Stephen King adaptation called The Long Walk. It's in post-production, and it's going to be directed by Francis Lawrence, who directed Constantine, Hunger Games, and I Am Legend. So that should be a good one, written by J.T. Molnar. This one stars Willa Fitzgerald from the Scream TV series, and she was also in Fall of the House of Usher. Kyle Gallner, as we mentioned before, from Smile, Scream, The Cleansing Hour, which is really good, and I highly recommend Alien Code. It's a sci-fi alien invasion movie, but completely unconventional. He was also in Red State and Jennifer's Body, so this guy's racking up quite an impressive filmography. And I loved seeing Ed Begley Jr. in this from St. Elsewhere, and of course Barbara Hershey from Insidious, Black Swan, and The Entity, going way back. Synopsis: set in rural Oregon, the film focuses on a man and woman who have a one-night stand that devolves into a cat-and-mouse game of murder. It is divided into 6 chapters in nonlinear order and presented as a dramatization of the pinnacle of a serial killer's year-long murder spree in the western United States. And by the way, great cinematography in this movie done by Giovanni Ribisi, the actor. This is his first film as a cinematographer, and I can't wait to see what else this guy does, because that was one of the best things about this movie was the cinematography. And a little tidbit about this movie: this is a rare occurrence where a test screening actually helped the filmmaker's vision. So Miramax didn't want the movie. They had signed up for it, but when they saw it was out of order, that they argued. They tried to even take JT Mulner off the movie, but they tried to take it away from him, and several times actually. And they even hired an editor behind his back to recut the film in chronological order, and they were going to release it like that. So JT utilized his clause in his contract, which said that he could show his director's cut to test audiences. So when they showed it to test audiences, the positive reaction was so overwhelming that Miramax had to actually bow to JT Mulner and say, "Okay, we were wrong. We're going to make this movie, and you can have it out of order if you want."
Is this the same
Because,
studio that produced Pulp Fiction?
huh?
Miramax, the same studio that whose biggest hit is Pulp Fiction, had a
I
problem
know, right?
with the movie being taking place out of order. I was like, that sounds absurd, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. Somebody else must be in charge.
Yeah, somebody else must be definitely be in charge now. But I'm like, there's a lot of this that I think Pulp Fiction is actually a big influence on this movie. Tarantino in general, but Pulp Fiction specifically, I think is a big influence on it. So I find it
Yeah.
weird that a studio that is known like Miramax for taking all of these ballsy choices and like that like would even question that actually.
Yeah. I love when writer directors take a stand against the studio and win like that.
Mm-hmm.
What a clever clause to have in the contract. Like no, I'm going to prove this to the audiences, because I think he had a feeling that they weren't going to go
Yeah.
for it.
To be
So
honest,
he
I
was like,
don't think the movie would be as effective as this in order. It's made to be out of order.
yeah, but I don't know if I would trust the audiences that much to see my vision.
That shows that he's very confident, that he was always very confident in his vision. And I think you could tell it's a very confidently directed movie. It has a very sure sense of purpose. It knows what it's going to do and it lays it out and it just tackles it full throttle. It's a very bold film. It's one of those movies where every single choice that you make is bold. It's something that could throw people off. But what it does instead is it makes it very unpredictable from the very beginning. It's a movie like Milk and Cereal, but I think even
Yeah,
more clever than that. Constantly upending your expectations and rewriting what you think of what's going on at the moment. It starts off one way and you think you know where it's going, and then it turns out, and then by the next scene, it makes you re-examine the scenes before that, like, oh no, I need to reconsider those scenes, and then by the like, and it keeps doing this throughout the whole thing where you have to reconsider what you just saw. And for a lot of people, I know it's a complaint for a lot of people that it's trying to be too clever. So I could see a lot of people being annoyed with it. I can see a lot of people being irritated with it. I personally like when a filmmaker takes that many chances and trusts that the audience is going to follow them wherever they choose to go.
well, I was apprehensive about it being out of order at first when I first saw that the chapters were going out of order, because I thought it was arbitrary.
Mm.
But then you get about halfway through the movie and you realize, no, there's a very clear purpose in showing these scenes out of order. He kind of messes with your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But the and I know you said something about it not being as much of a horror film, that like there not being as many horror elements, which is what you might have put it higher. But
Yeah.
I think just the visceral nature of it, and I think the directing had a lot to do with that, and the acting. It
Mm-hmm.
just felt so serious and so dangerous that I could feel that sense of danger through the whole thing, the same way I feel during a really good horror film. That's why it remained horror for me.
I guess it's just because out of any of the movies on my list when I'm looking at it, it's the one that easily slots into thriller more than the rest of the movies on my list. That if you classified it as a thriller, that's an easier sell than calling something like Milk and Cereal uh,
Yeah.
a thriller or something like that. I think it can fit into that a little bit more than the average. So it's a horror movie, it's a thriller, but it kind of feels like it kind of dances between both a little bit.
And so the anxiety inducing nature of it, I think, was on the horror level.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, that's a movie that we you and I watched together at your house. So I
Yeah.
rented it and I didn't one of those experiences where like, whoa, we ended up being both caught very off guard, thoroughly entertained.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of
And
the best movies of 2024, no question, as far as I'm concerned.
the twist, by the way, so many people, you know how there's always tons of people. Anytime a movie has a twist, they, I saw it coming a mile away. Or some people are so proud of themselves that they saw the twist coming before it came. That's not what this movie's about. It has twists and it has misdirections, but it's meant to make you feel the story beats. It's not meant to fool you or confuse you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's meant to actually solidify what you're feeling about the story and what's going on.
And we have to say something for the acting too. I think Kyle Gallner, of course, is killing it. Willa
Yes.
Fitzgerald, and I like that they're kind of played as archetypes. Like I think he's called the demon. I forget what she's called.
Yeah.
Even that kind of throws you off at the beginning. The fact that he's called the demon right from the beginning, they're kind of like these stock archetypes. So you start to, as the movie goes on, you get to see a little bit more layers to them. And it's interesting is that Kyle Gallner is a very he's an intimidating dude. Like the way that he comes across
Yeah.
in this movie, he's like a very strong, ultra masculine presence where he looks like he's not somebody you would fuck with, basically. Like
Yeah.
I think the movie plays into that. He looks kind of scary. He's not somebody you would ever try to challenge or any way. I would be frightened of him.
Well, if you think about it, both of the main characters played each of them played two entirely different characters, depending on how you're supposed to feel at that moment. But they played two different characters in a way where the story beats and the things that were going on in the story is what made them act different. You know what I mean?
That's true.
It wasn't that they were two separate characters; they just felt like two separate characters. So that they made you feel exactly the way you're supposed to feel at any given moment. And the doing the story out of order, doing the chapters out of order, is what helps sell that.
And if that sounds confusing to the audience or convoluted, just watch the damn movie and you'll see what we
Yeah,
mean. Just you'll get it. Trust me, you'll get it.
yeah.
But
So
yeah,
that's my number three.
yeah, I loved it. I just want to say it is a fiercely original film. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely one of my favorite movies of the year overall. Fantastic movie, highly recommended. Okay, so my number three is one of the other two movies that really caught me off guard. The first one was Milk and Cereal because I thought I would like Milk and Cereal. I didn't think I would love it as much as I did. The next one on my list, my number three, is the French Canadian film Red Rooms, directed by Pascal Plante. Quick synopsis: the high profile case of serial killer Ludovic Chevalier has just gone to trial, and Callie Ann is obsessed. When reality blurs with her morbid fantasies, she goes down a dark path to seek the final piece of the case's puzzle. And this one left such an impression on me immediately that I just wanted to read my review really quick that I had put on Letterboxd. Deeply unsettling and absorbing in every frame, masterfully directed, it had me gripped from the beginning, and I felt increasingly uncomfortable as the tension mounted. Crawls under your skin and sticks in there like a knife that keeps twisting and turning as the tension builds. Great performances all around. Pascal Plante really knows how to move that camera to draw the viewer further and further into a story that might be too realistic for some audience members, the kind of subtly made horror movie that we don't see enough of anymore, worthy of Polanski's thrillers and horror movies. Plante is a filmmaker I'm definitely going to be looking out for. So yeah, this one actually caught me really off guard. It's very tough subject matter, and I think for some horror fans it might be too realistic in terms of what it's tackling. Very disturbing. It's about a serial killer who's on trial for taping and live streaming murders to people who pay to see young girls get tortured. As I think it's like a 13-year-old girl, a 16-year-old girl, and it's a 17-year-old girl. And it's about two women who are very obsessed and they keep showing up to the trial. And what I like about the movie is that the two characters at first, Kellyanne and Clementine. Kellyanne, who is the main character of the movie, she comes across as a very level-headed, intelligent person. And I saw it twice, but I didn't really see the signs of how fucked up she actually is as a person. But she almost, I thought I didn't, because the movie, when it drops you in, it doesn't explain to you who these characters are or why they're even watching this trial in the first place. I thought she was a journalist. She gave me the vibes of a journalist, and her interests seemed very like stern and serious and very professional. And her friend Clementine comes across as a complete weirdo because she's defending the serial killer. She doesn't even know him, but she's convinced of his innocence. And when you're
Mm.
watching it, she comes across as the wacky one, and the main character comes across as somebody who's just sane and has like a professional interest. But the longer the movie goes on, little peaks of her personality start to go through, and you start to realize that her interest in the case is not professional. It's actually very weird and a little perverse. And it gets to
Yeah.
the point where they show up to the trial every day and they kick people out of the trial because they're going to show the actual videos. And the movie reveals like there, oh no, Kellyanne actually has access to these videos and she can show Clementine herself. And Clementine is very disturbed by what she sees, and you don't really see Kellyanne having enough of a reaction. And the person who you initially think is a fucking crazy person turns out to be a human being, a regular human being that was a little misguided, comes to their senses. And the rest of the movie, you see Kellyanne really delve into like the extent of how fucked up her psyche is. The photo shoots that she does, the people that she hangs around with online, the places that she goes into. And I like that you don't see a lot of what's going on. You see a lot of her reactions to things when she's staring at the screen and like the red starts going on her face. There's a couple of moments where I got chills because I realized this woman is fucking insane. She's a very sick and deeply disturbed person. And you could just see it in the eyes. I think she sells the performance very subtly. And there's just this moment at the end where she's in somebody's house and she doesn't even do anything particularly like violent or evil, but her behavior in the house is just unsettling just because I don't think a normal empathetic human being would do something like that, would take those types of pictures of themselves. And I just loved it as like a portrait of a descent into somebody's completely disturbed psychosis. And I love the camera movements in this movie. It's a movie that draws the viewer in by moving the camera super, super slow. And it's established right in the beginning with like the courtroom scenes when it's going around the courtroom and the way it like very, very slowly zooms in on different characters until you could like you're stuck with just like staring at their face and their close-ups. The moment when you kind of like zoom in on the killer who's on trial, the way that he's filing his nails, the way that he doesn't even seem to give a shit about what's going on. There are just moments like the moment where she's cosplaying as a
Oh yeah.
person in court. That scene had my jaw dropped, and like it's like the subtle moment where the serial killer just looks over her and kind of waves, and there's like this very
Yeah.
jarring freak that comes on the soundtrack that jarred me and made me very uncomfortable. And I loved just how it sells the horror of this person through very subtle techniques. How we never really see the killings that this guy does, but the thing is we don't need to see it. We hear it, we see people's reaction, we hear people watching the videos without actually seeing it. And it's just one of those movies that kind of shocked me and had me really gripped the entire runtime. And I did kind of like a half watch. I was kind of like cleaning my room the second time I had it on. But like I could pick up on things from the beginning that like I didn't notice the first time. There are already hints that from the very beginning that she was a very unstable, disturbed human being that the movie was actually setting it up the whole time. I just didn't catch. You kind of have to know where it's heading to know what those hints actually what those hints actually are. But it
That
reminded me.
speaks.
Yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say that speaks to my experience with this movie because I liked it from the first time I saw it. But I even wrote in my review that it kind of lost me
Mm-hmm.
about 3/4 of the way through because you're thinking where the hell is this going because it doesn't offer anything. It gives you such small
Mm-hmm.
glimpses of this woman's motivations.
Yeah.
But so I saw on Letterbox that you seemed to like it more than I did. Like I need to watch this movie again, so I watched it again. And I didn't have any of the problems. It didn't almost lose me that time because I knew where it was going. So there wasn't so much of where is this going? What the hell is she up to? And it almost lost me. But on the second one, you could see the little tidbits of
Uh,
her character throughout, and you kind of points to where it's going, but it's subtle.
yeah, and that's what I liked about it. And look, before you all want to come cancel me, when I compare it to Roman Polanski movies, yes, I know Roman Polanski is a piece of shit. He's a fucking pedophile. He's a deplorable human being. But let's be honest here, the man made some great films, some masterpieces, and I think this kind of reminds me of a movie like Repulsion with Catherine Deneuve, where you see the slow descent. Much different film than Repulsion, but I think it has the same level of skill that a movie like Repulsion or Rosemary's Baby does in terms of like the subtle camera movements, the psychological elements, the way that it builds the interior of a character very slowly, the way that it kind of climaxes to something much bigger. It reminded me of a lot of early Roman Polanski horror movies.
Well, so,
Um,
so there's one question that I have about it. See what you think. So ultimately, by the end, without giving too much away, it seems like her motivation the entire time was righteous. So when I think of it that way, it doesn't explain the cosplay. So was she righteous and also fucked up?
I think she got off on it a little.
Yeah,
I think what she led to, I don't know how to describe it. And that's another thing the movie doesn't explain. She's a very morally complex character. She seems to do the right thing for all the wrong reasons.
yeah,
Like,
and it,
yeah, like she did what she did at the end more because she gets off on playing a part in this drama that she wants to like put herself in.
uh,
And I think that's what it is. That's how even her, without giving too much away, by her taking the picture of herself in that house and stuff like that.
yeah.
It's her inserting herself into it. So she did
So she
something.
ended up playing the ultimate part in the movie. I
Yeah,
mean, in the story.
yeah. So that's why she wanted to be able to say that she played a part in it. But she's a very sick person though, a very depraved human
Yeah.
being. And I thought she was very mentally stable and just like a straight up journalist at first. And the more it goes, I'm like, oh, this is fucking crazy, dude. She's completely out of her mind. Especially that courtroom cosplaying stunt. That scene had me
Yeah.
like, that is insane. That's crazy.
Because at first I thought, oh, she's a semi-successful model who's just kind of really interested in this case, and then you think, well, maybe one of the victims is related to her somehow. Maybe it's that, and then you see the cosplay thing and her completely just letting her job fly away.
And I think where it becomes very like where you as an audience are starting to have some clarification is when Clementine, the secondary character who's also obsessed with it, when she has some clarity, when she realizes
Yes.
that what she's doing is a little wrong, and like that scene where she gives her that tennis racket, and she's like, she decides she's just gonna go home and abandon this, and she's like, I don't understand. You never told me why are you interested in this? Like, why are you involved? And she doesn't answer. She just kind of looks away.
Yeah, she was like had a weird look on her face too.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Kellyanne doesn't tell you why is she interested, and Clementine seems bothered by this. And when she like looks, she doesn't give an answer, and she walks away. She throws the tennis racket away because I think she gets like, I don't want anything to do with this person. It's very
yeah,
obvious that she's not well because she can't give a good reason as to like what is your interest in this case and how do you have access to all of this information about the case and how why have you seen these videos, like what are you doing here exactly. So it's like I said,
Yeah.
I thought she was a journalist, and it's like, okay, she's a model. Like, what is she? Like, is she like? And you guys know she's a fucking sick person.
And when that secondary character has a change of heart, you can see it so much in her acting. Just what she's exposed to makes her completely flip her perspective of it, and you can just see it all in her face. She doesn't need to say anything.
Yeah,
And then when she says, "Okay, I'm leaving and going home," you're not surprised in the least because of her face when she saw that.
yeah, and that's what I loved about it. Everything about it is subtle, but everything
Yeah,
about it sells its points very well. And it's one of those horror movies where the implications are more frightening than, watching some depraved act play out or act happen. And great acting all around, like you said, because you could see everything on the faces of these people. It says so much more than a lot of dialogue could. But I was blown away by this movie, and it's one of those ones where, like Milk and Cereal, it was like one of the ones that you threw out when I was asking you for horror movies, and I saw Red Room. Like, okay, I'm gonna check that one out tonight.
yeah.
Really took me off guard and had me hooked. Like I was like literally on the edge of my seat with like heart racing for certain scenes of the movie. But yeah, Red Room's one of the best horror movies of the year in my opinion. I loved it. Loved it.
Nice. What a great year for horror! If a movie that good didn't even make my honorable mentions, it's so good.
Oh yeah, there's some stuff I was sad to leave off of my lists.
And that was a little gem right there that just came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Available on Shutter if anybody wants to watch it. Red Rooms is on Shutter. French Canadian. Don't bitch about the subtitles.
Yeah, very satisfying.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our final two movies. So since it's the final two, even if we have the same on our posts on our list, we can go ahead and discuss them, right? Since we're down to the last two.
Okay. Yeah. Why not?
So my number two is a movie that absolutely blew me away. It could have easily been my number one. I saw the TV Glow.
Okay, so my number two is I Saw the TV Glow, which means we have the exact same number one and number two because there's only one other option that could be number one, and it's so very.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
figured this was going to happen. It's written and directed by Jane Schoenburn. She did We're All Going to the World's Fair, and after watching this and loving it so much, I got to give We're All Going to the World's Fair a chance again because I just didn't get it. It didn't connect with it. It was interesting through a lot of the movie. It just didn't go anywhere where I thought it was going. So maybe I should watch it again after watching some of the existential layers of this one. But it stars Justice Smith. He was in The Get Down, A Jurassic World, and Dungeons and Dragons. And Jack Haven as Maddie. She was in Amelia's Children, which was this year. I didn't get a chance to watch that, but I need to watch that one. It's another horror movie from 2024. She was also in, or is it he?
I don't know.
Does Jack Haven identify as a? Well, it's a female character in the movie anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But she was in Bill and Ted's Face the Music and the show Atypical. And of course, Fred Durst from The Fanatic and Y2K, another movie this year. Y2K had very gratuitous Fred Durst. This one had a perfect amount of Fred Durst, if that's possible. So the
My
synopsis.
question is, how did Fred Durst end up in two A24 produced horror movies in 1 year?
I know.
I
And
think
how
it
could
says
he?
something disturbing. There's like a Limp Bizkit revival going on in pop culture, right?
Yes.
Why,
Why?
people? Why
Why?
is there a Limp Bizkit revival going on? Is the more important question. But back to I Saw the TV Go.
And how did this great director even think to choose him? I don't get it. But
Also,
he
both of
does.
the
He
movies
does
he's
great.
in, both of them are movies about nostalgia.
That's true.
That's very very interesting, and they're both movies that are related in nostalgia from an era when Limp Bizkit was popular, which I think says a lot about how much Limp Bizkit defined a certain era when you think about it. Which is kind
Yeah.
of
And he was actually really good in both movies, but in Y2K it was just too much of him. Like, all right, you got Fred Durst and he's doing pretty good, but overkill.
yes.
Well, the synopsis is teenager Owen is just trying to make it through life in the suburbs when his classmate introduces him to a mysterious late night TV show, one which conveys a vision of supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack. Um, the television show that they're watching this is called The Pink Opaque, and it's inspired by and has several parallels to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Uh, and a little tidbit on this one: the original ending was a happier one. If people don't like the somber ending of this one, the original ending was happier, where Owen keeps walking and embraces a bright light to show a moment of finally admitting his inner truth. But the director cut it because they thought it was too obvious. The director didn't want to make the point so obvious on that one.
I wouldn't have liked it like that, to be honest.
Yeah, me either. Because with a movie like that, a happy ending would not have fit,
No.
or
I
or
think it
or
has
anything a little
a
clearer.
hopeful ending, but it's an ending that still leaves you feeling very sad. There's hope for it if the character could continue down that path, but I think like making it solid would have just put too much of a bow, wrapped the movie too much in a bow.
Yeah, and everything you saw before that does not match wrapping everything up in a nice bow.
No, not at all.
There's nothing wrapped up nicely about this movie.
No.
But I found it extremely immersive. Not just the visuals and the editing, but also the acting, the writing, and the directing. It all pulls you into this world. And then that score that seems to perfectly match. It doesn't just perfectly match the other elements, it enhances all of them. So I think every element in this movie plays off of each other to get that optimal reaction that you want. Because I had such a visceral reaction to this. Like,
Hmm.
I'm a little choked up just talking about it because that's how much it affected me.
I'm just gonna say it. I think it's a masterpiece. Like,
I do too.
it's not my number one movie just because the number one that I picked is more of a horror movie than I Saw the TV Glow is. Um, I Saw the TV Glow is a great film that happens to be a horror movie, if that makes sense. If that,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great film that happens to be a horror movie. It is the only film of 2024 that on Letterboxd I've rated a 5 out of 5 star ratings, which I rarely ever give those ratings to any film. You get a 4.5 star, you're fucking lucky. I'm not even
Yeah.
hoping you to get for a 4 star. But like the like really like truly, I think this is a masterpiece. I think it is a great film in every way. I think it's immersive. I think that the acting from top to bottom is phenomenal. I think this is a beautifully shot movie. I think it's beautifully shot. I think the soundtrack is great. I think that it is very emotionally engaging right from the beginning. Um, it's not heartbreaking right away, but the two main characters have such a sad quality to it that they made me sad when I was watching
Yeah.
them, and they made my heart yearn to like reach out across the screen and comfort these very two damaged, sad, lost souls that seem to have found each other. And when we watched it together, we were looking for horror movies to watch. I had given up on this movie being a horror movie about like 30 minutes into it because that wasn't the vibes I was getting off of. I Saw the TV Glow. It was more of like a sad indie movie. But I stopped caring that it wasn't a horror movie at that point because
Yeah.
I don't care. This is not a horror movie. This is just fantastic. It's phenomenal. Like so engaged. And then when it takes the right turn into horror and when it starts getting sinister and scary, it gets very scary because to the point you've been hypnotized. And not only that,
Yeah.
come to like care about these characters on a very deep emotional level where you want so much for their mental well-being that when it dips into its nightmare territory, it feels extra nightmarish, it feels extra sinister, and I think it's just completely hypnotic. Like, um, it's one of those directors who's obviously very influenced by David Lynch, but a lot of like Lynchian filmmakers don't really capture the magic. And Jane Schoenbaum, and I'm probably not saying the name right, actually like tapped into what makes some of David Lynch's surrealism special. How emotionally grounded it is. That when it dips into horror, it becomes as horrifying as it does. The imagery is very jarring and disturbing. The nightmare images that come out of it totally hooked and had me breathless because I was already like so deeply drawn into the movie. And then when the horror elements end, it goes back to being heartbreaking again, to like such a powerful ending, the way that it climaxes, the way it's about identity, the way it's about a person who's denied themselves for so long, the pain that they feel from pushing who they really are, pushing it down on the inside. Very internal performance. It starts to hurt the viewer after a while because you feel the pain of the main character, and it leaves you completely heartbroken. The last scene when he's like screaming that I'm dying, like it's not literally I'm dying, but like my spirit is being crushed because I've
Yeah.
so denied myself what makes me who I am for so long that it's just crushing me on the inside. Very emotional, very beautiful, the realization too, but man, in a way that really stings. So it engages you right from the beginning. You become emotionally hooked. When it becomes a horror movie, it becomes genuinely horrifying because you're trapped in a nightmare with characters that you love. And it has a fucking gut punch of an ending that just leaves you feeling devastated but a little hopeful. And it's one of those movies that just the first time I saw it, it just stuck in my head for days after that. Like such a powerful movie, and like I'm just gonna say it, the fact that this didn't get nominated for Best Picture or didn't get nominated for a buttload of Oscars, I think is an absolute travesty. And I'm not trying to talk shit. I haven't seen Amelia Perez, so I don't know. But I've heard very awful things about it. Both from the film community doesn't seem to like Amelia Perez. Film
Yeah.
critics don't like Amelia Perez, and the communities that the film is about don't like it. The trans community doesn't like Amelia Perez, and the GLAD Awards actually spoke out against it. And the Mexican, I'm Mexican too, but I've heard some very bad things about its portrayal of Mexican culture, and it doesn't seem to have like a good reception. This is a movie that has trans identity at its core, though I don't think that's like what makes it great. That is a big part of it. It's a little bit has that kind of theme going, and it's everybody that I've ever talked to about this movie seems to love it. It has great reviews. Not enough people have seen it, but the people who have seen it seem to think it's fantastic, and it's a good story that tackles trans identity. And the Academy had to pick the one that everybody fucking hated.
Yeah.
You didn't pick this movie. Yeah,
Well,
I
I saw people in some of the horror groups complaining about this movie, saying that there was nothing scary about it and it wasn't even horror. But in order for you to feel the horror in a movie like this, you have to be all the way in. It's just like someone who's not susceptible to hypnotism.
mhm.
But if you're able to allow yourself to be hypnotized by this movie, it'll scare the shit out of you. Like Mr. Melancholy,
Frightening.
by the time Mr. Melancholy became scary, I was all the way into the story. I was all the way into the characters. I felt like I was inside the movie. So that by the time he started talking in a sinister voice, I felt like he was talking to me, and it scared the shit out of me. And the effect on his voice, it's almost like a dry vocal, but it also sounds like a otherworldly element to it.
Yeah.
So when he starts talking, it felt like it was inside my head, and it freaked me the fuck out.
Oh yeah. I think it really does a great job of really worming its way into your head. And it's Maddie is played by Jack Haven. I
Yeah.
believe the pronouns are they, them. They are known for playing, yeah. Jack Haven as Maddie delivers this speech in the movie that is just
Oh
one
my god.
of such a fucking phenomenal piece of acting. That
That's
speech.
like the centerpiece of the movie, right? For me.
Oh yeah, and it's like so draws you in, but like there's not a thing about this movie that doesn't work for me. I think it's horror, and again, I think if you want to find it horrifying and find it as nightmare, and it is nightmarish when it becomes nightmarish. I think you already have to care about the characters to a certain extent. And I think if you go in watching it and like wrinkling your nose, that this isn't horror. I don't see any horror going on. Like you're being impatient. You're not letting it play out. If you're not willing to have empathy for these characters, or if you don't have empathy as a person for other people or people with different experiences, then I don't think you're gonna care for it. And that almost sounds like a snobby thing for me to say, but I almost feel like if you really hated this movie, I'm like, do you have empathy as a person? It's just my question.
Yeah.
Did you not
Well,
be moved by what you are seeing on screen? And here's the thing: it centers around cause like a trans identity, but I feel like anybody could relate to the emotional pain being expressed. And I feel like even if you are not trans, I think a lot of that pain and holding yourself in can translate to a lot of different experiences, whether it's like, or the nostalgia, which we haven't even touched on it because there's so much going on. Like, nostalgia is a big part of this movie, but I feel like there's so many things that like you don't even have to be trans to understand the emotional pain or to relate to it. You just have to be a fucking human being who's had your own struggles, who's had a problem admitting to yourself certain things about yourself or anything. Like I totally related it to so many ways. And like I said, I'm not trans, but I don't think that's even necessary. So when I see people, well, it's good, but the trans thing, I'm like, come on, man, like you're not letting yourself
yeah,
like
I don't think you have to directly relate to the trans themes to get something out of it, or pull at least some of it from your own thoughts and feelings. Like the theme of unrealized potential is universal,
yes.
and that's what scared the shit out of me because I'm scared to death of unrealized potential, and my worst fear is mediocrity. So the end was deeply frightening for me
Mm,
because I put myself in that character when he screamed that he's dying.
yeah, so
If I didn't realize my potential, I would fucking die. If I ever got an inkling that I was never going to realize my potential, my life would be over. So that spoke very deeply to me in that way.
yeah, it spoke to me too. But yeah, I love I saw the TV glow. I like the way it taps into nostalgia, and I like its accuracy of nostalgia because they're obsessed with the pink opaque, and it comes across a little bit cheesy when like they're showing like episodes from it or clips from it.
Yeah,
But there's still something very strange about it, like almost Twin Peaks like that I can't put into words that like it looks a little cheesy and cheap, but there's something about it that seems a little creepy at the same. I can't put my words and like there's something effective about it. Then when he watches the show years later on Netflix and you see what it really is and it's really bad. I've had a lot of
yeah,
experiences of stuff like that I was nostalgic for growing up, and then you watch it as an older person, you're like, this sucks. This is ass. Like, what did my
yeah.
made me think it was good? I had a similar experience with Goosebumps, which I loved as a kid. I remember when I was setting, this was a long time ago, when I was 17, I tried watching Goosebumps again and just thinking, oh my God, this is awful. There's nothing scary.
Yeah.
It's so bad and so cheesy. So I think a lot of, being a millennial. I think this is a very millennial movie because millennials are some of the most nostalgic people out there. I think this movie really taps into millennial nostalgia and the disappointment of millennial nostalgia.
And it speaks to the theme of growing older and losing your childhood and losing that wonder that you had as a child. That's another theme that's really effective in it
There's a lot
because
of you,
things are so magical as a child.
yeah, yeah. You lose that sense of wonder as you get older. So like I said, there's so many universal elements to it that I just have a hard time comprehending. Well, I don't relate to that, so I get it, but I don't. I'm like, you can't see anything that you relate to in this movie. Like, okay, I guess, but
And another thing I loved about it is when Maddie had her dialogue
mm,
or her monologue.
monologue.
During that monologue, I had already recognized the themes and saw that they were very clearly had some kind of psychosis over this show. I still allowed myself to believe that this was somehow real, that maybe, just maybe, this world that they had created for themselves was real. So it really helped sell the supernatural elements for me
Hmm.
because I knew there was themes going on. I knew it was in their heads, but that monologue was so convincing. I allowed myself to believe it was real all the way up to the end.
I definitely feel you. So I
And
saw.
you see the look on the guy's face after she finishes her monologue. Just the look on his face. I swear, I probably had the exact same face as he did,
Yeah,
like mouth hanging open. is it fucking real?
That scene gives me chills too when when she starts talking and starts telling him like, "Hey, remember that show, The Pink Opaque? I've been there."
Yeah.
Starts going into it, but I watched it 3 times. I watched it with you. I watched it with my friend Eduardo, and I watched it with my friend Julian. And each time I watched it with a different friend, they were all emotionally impacted by the movie by the end. All had like a big offense. And again, like this goes back, none of us are trans, and yet we could all relate to it, and we could all feel the pain and the struggle of it, and it left us all feeling kind of melancholy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great movie. I would describe it as a great film that happens to be a horror movie than a great horror movie per se. But a great film that happens to be a horror movie is still a fucking great horror movie, so it has to be very high on the list. Hence, it's why it's my number two, and your number two.
And this is another one that I watched with my kids because I watched it with you, and it completely blew me away so much that I couldn't stop talking about it the next day. So both my kids were like, "I have to see this movie that blew you away like this," and they did not expect it to be so cerebral. They wanted some visceral, easy to watch movie, but it was.
Gen Z and their short attention spans, right?
Yeah. Well, because I set up their expectations so high because I couldn't stop talking about it. They're like, "Oh man, this must be the greatest horror film ever," and then they weren't scared by it at all.
And it's for specific reasons like that that as much as I almost did, I couldn't make it the number one horror movie of 2024. It didn't feel right.
Yeah.
But on to our number one. And we already know what this is. I already know what your number one is, and you already know what my number one is, and it's very obvious. And I think this will be the first year that our top twos are identical, and for
Yeah.
very similar purposes, for very similar reasons.
So
So
both of
just
our
say it.
number ones,
The
the
substance.
substance.
What else?
I know,
What else could be number one?
and like I said, uh, I saw the TV Glow could have very easily been number one, but for me, it's the theater experience that put the substance at the top for me. I just could not get over my glee of watching a movie that goes this hard on a big screen with a decent budget and stars in it. It just I heard it was a hardcore body horror film too going in, but it's still probably about halfway through the movie it started shocking me and it continued shocking me of how far it went all the way up to the climax.
I had to put this as my number one horror movie. This Rise is it's strange. It's like whereas with I Saw the TV Glow, I said it's a great film that happens to be a horror movie. This is a great horror movie that happens to be a great film. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's ultimately what ekes it out to number one. Just for like as a horror film, as a body horror movie, as that very specific niche subgenre, this is up there with the best body horror movies as far as I'm concerned. It's up there with David Cronenberg's best work. I think it's
Yeah.
up there with Videodrome and The Fly, films of that caliber. I think it's a new horror classic. And on top of it all, this is a long movie. It's like 2.5 hours long, so it's not short. And boy, does it zip by, and it does not feel
Yeah.
that long at all. And it's one of those movies that takes its horror and goes to such extremes that I end up giddy and gleeful by the end of it because I can't believe that a horror that it's going this far as it does makes it even more shocking. I was like, how the fuck did this movie get nominated for Best Picture? This is
Yeah.
like one of those types of movies where you see as like, oh, if the Oscars had any balls whatsoever, that would be nominated for Best Picture, but you know it's not going to happen. And they actually did it this time. I'm
Yeah.
really surprised that they did. Um, it is so inventive, so formally inventive as a piece of filmmaking, very creative. Carolee Farge, who was already, I loved Revenge. I thought she was somebody to
Yes.
for. I think this blows past Revenge on so many levels as a piece of filmmaking, as a piece of art, as a horror movie, on every level. Demi Moore's performance in this is fucking phenomenal. I think she's heartbreaking. I think she gives a very, very, very committed performance. I think she's still beautiful. She shows a
Yeah.
different type of beauty. But yeah, do you want to give the synopsis because we haven't said anything about what the substance is about?
Yeah, it follows a fading celebrity, Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore, who, after being fired by her producer Dennis Quaid due to her age, uses a black market drug that creates a younger version of herself, played by Margaret Qualley, with unexpected side effects.
Yeah, very unexpected.
And it won the Oscar for Best Makeup, and it was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. All well-deserving nominations. And I think this is a perfect example of a director where she did something like Revenge, where she did the most she could do with her resources, with her budget, and then when she was given a real budget and real resources, she just took it and ran.
Mhm.
Because I can't imagine this premise being done any better, and I can't imagine the body horror being done any better. Like what does she say? Oh yeah, Fargia. How do you say her name? Fargia. Fargia.
Charlie Farge.
Fargia. Yeah. She said she used body horror as a weapon of expression, and that totally fits how hard this goes. Because you know, I haven't seen a universally loved horror film as much as this for a while, but the people who did complain about it said the rest of it was really high quality film, but it went completely crazy and off the rails by the end. But it's very deliberate. And just like she says, she's using that body horror as a weapon of expression to like spew the premise into your face, you know, like to make you feel it. And you do.
Um, yeah, this is one of those movies where everything about it is surprising and catches you off guard. It never goes where you think it's going, and I think that's a trend that I saw this year. Is that for the most part, even when movies are great, I rarely see movies that I can say that are actually like unpredictable and you don't know where they're going. They actually feel like between movies like this and I saw the TV Glow and Strange Darling and Milk and Cereal, this is a year that is surprising for movies that are actually genuinely unpredictable when you watch them. Movies that actually feel genuinely original. And what's crazy about The Substance is such a fiercely original movie, and it wears its influences on its sleeve everywhere. You see, Kubrick is very apparent in this movie. Very
Yeah.
obvious throwbacks to The Shinings, where if you think it's by accident, it's followed up by another overt reference where it cannot be by mistake. And if you thought those were mistakes, then she goes and throws a 2001 A Space Odyssey reference in at the
Yeah.
end. A lot of David Cronenberg in here.
The Fly,
A lot of like The
uh,
Fly,
Picture of Dorian Gray.
Picture of Dorian Gray. There's some David Lynch in here, some Lost Highway, especially there's like one scene where you see it online. It's when the close-ups when he's talking on the phone to the person. It's very reminiscent of the way that Patricia Arquette looks when she's on the phone.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Balthazar Getty. They show those pictures online. The framing and the placement are almost exactly identical when they're on the phone. So you could see a lot of Kubrick, a lot of Lynch, a lot of Cronenberg in here. And yet, for all the very obvious homages to these other great filmmakers, it is very much her own voice, and it doesn't feel like she's copying any of them. She's just paying tribute while doing something unlike anything those filmmakers have ever done. And the fact is, this is very much shot through a female perspective of what it's like to be a woman in our society, what it's like to be an aging woman, and what it would be like to be an aging superstar, somebody who's in the industry, somebody who's in the spotlight, and how Hollywood tends to favor the ingenues and the young starlets and kind of tosses its older female talent out the window as soon as it gets the opportunity or as soon as they reach a certain age. So it's very shot through a female perspective that you never could have gotten off of Lynch or Kubrick or Cronenberg because those are not the experiences that they've ever had in life. So they couldn't really, those aren't really issues they could have spoke on. But it has a very strong message about aging, about the value of women, about how society treats women. And it puts this message in the most insane, over the top body horror movie that just completely goes for it. It's one of those things that makes you squirm, it makes you scream. And by the end, I was cackling. I'm not going to lie. By the end of the movie, when it gets to the point it does, I was cackling. And yet, I thought it was sad at the same time. I thought it was very heartbreaking for all the much as I was laughing at the ending because of how absurdly over the top it goes. there is something very sad about the monster by the end of the movie, something very heartbreaking. And it's a testament to Demi Moore's performance. This is the best performance she's ever done.
Yeah.
I think totally great. Margaret Qualley, beautiful, great. Uh,
And what one thing I didn't realize about the climax is when she starts devolving into this monster, right? You see the different stages of the makeup, and then it's always Demi Moore. It's just more and more added to the makeup, and then by the time it starts turning into a monster, it switches to Margaret Qualley, which is
because
so
she's the
perfect. But
monster.
I didn't even realize it watching the movie. So Margaret Qualley was the big monster at the end. I thought that was a really cool touch to have the younger one be the monster.
That makes sense given her behavior and the things that she does in the movie and the way that the characters switch back and forth.
Yeah,
Margaret Qualley's great in it too. Exceptionally fucking hot in this movie, like
yeah.
ridiculously hot, which is very, very much on purpose. That is part of the point. And yeah,
And
it's
her fake boobs were excellent, by the way. Those are prosthetic boobs to make them look more like Demi Moore's. I didn't see any seams or anything. That was just an excellent makeup job right there, just to give her
they
different
were
breasts.
they were fake.
Yeah,
Really interesting. They were fake.
yeah, just Margaret Qualley's, not Demi Moore's, because they kind of shaped them like Demi Moore's. But
Interesting. I
did you know that Ray Liotta was originally Dennis Quaid's character?
Yeah,
But
I did, but
he died before they make it made it. I can't imagine anybody else in that part except for Dennis Quaid and those close up of him eating. That was more gross than any of the body horror. Too.
when I watched it with my friend Julian, he said that sticks with me is the close-ups. Like what really grossed me out was the close-ups on the shrimp.
Yeah,
Him eating
and I
horrible.
read that he ate a ridiculous amount. Like he was really into making it look as sloppy and nasty as possible. And
And what
what a great depiction of what studios and big Hollywood does to stars like that.
I love how stylish this movie is too. There's no realism in this movie, which is why it's easy for me to buy the over-the-top ending because its premise is very unrealistic to begin with. It's very high concept science fiction when you actually think about what the premise is. Um, the characters, especially when you're looking at most of the male characters, like the way that Farge uses the camera to like these very uncomfortable close-ups on the male characters, and it's were almost like distorted, where you see every little detail or awkwardness of Dennis Quaid or the guy who Demi Moore runs into from high school, who's been like crushing on her for years and gives her his phone number and stuff like that. All the close-ups on their hand movements, on their face, on their like it makes what I imagine what it must be like to see pervy males always perving out on you all the time from a woman's perspective. But I thought most of the male characters were kind of funny in this, and their behavior is a little exaggerated. The hallways are extra long that they're in where they're doing the thing. Everything about it has an unreal quality to it. And it sets up a world that is very strange, very different from ours, very recognizable and similar to ours, but nothing like our world. But you're convinced and you're sold on it the entire time. There's not a shred of realism in this movie. That's why I don't think the ending is as much of a stretch as other people. I'm like, it was never that realistic to begin with. It always took place in this very heightened, stylized world.
And I can see why Demi Moore said what she said. She said that what drew her to the script and what first made her want to do the movie is she read it and it reminded her of Ghost in the way that when she first read the script of Ghost, she thought this could either be phenomenal or a complete train wreck. I got to do this as a challenge to myself. And she said that's what she done here. I could totally see that. And what I didn't realize is uh, I felt like I knew the characters way more than what I was shown. I don't
Mm.
know if I'm explaining that right, but I heard that the director omitted character backstories out of the script in favor of revealing their who they were as characters through actions, locations, and costumes. I thought that was really clever and well done. So I was wondering why I felt like I knew these characters so much, but there wasn't a whole lot of exploration into who they were.
I think you know just enough to understand them. I don't think you need
Yeah,
to like. I don't think that's necessary to the enjoyment of the movie.
but they still feel like informed, fully realized characters by the end. It's so cool.
And it's so fast paced and it moves at such a fast clip that it's actually surprising when it's over that it ends up that you're like, wow, that was as long as it was. And it's one of those movies where it's consistently bold and original and fearless and funny and horrifying and sad. And it makes you feel all kinds of different emotions. You could be laughing one moment at Demi Moore, and the next moment you feel deep sadness for her. And the
Yeah.
next moment you're fucking grossed out or you're creeped out by extreme body horror. And the next moment you're laughing at something bizarre and absurd. The next moment your heart's racing. Like it just takes you through so many different emotions so fast just for sheer originality. I don't think we had a more I don't think we had a more original horror film in 2024 than The Substance.
Yeah, and on top of it being such a uh, in-your-face horror film, it was so well made, such a polish.
Oh yeah.
You don't see many horror films like this at all with a polish like this, and it just worked for the premise.
I think what this has in common with I Saw the TV Glow, very masterfully directed films from filmmakers who are not as accomplished as what you would imagine. Like they're not as accomplished at like, which is not a knock, but you know they've only done a couple things here and there, and these are two films that come across like they were made by veteran filmmakers, people who have a very clear vision of what they're doing. Not only a clear vision, a unique vision, a vision that's unlike anything else that Hollywood has ever been able to produce. And it nails it so well, nails those voices, the voices that they have so well.
And this is another movie like Strange Darling, where the director stood up against the studio because Universal was originally attached to it, and they went hard. They didn't want this extreme body horror at the end, and the director refused to give. So said, let it go. And then Mubi picked it up and it ended up being the biggest grossing movie for Mubi. I love stories like that. Take that stand against those stupid studios.
I bet you they feel dumb now because it became such a big hit. I was like, man, they had no idea. And they probably the studio probably never thought there was Oscar glory in this movie either. Like they were watching.
Yeah.
Not only did you give away a hit, you gave away prestige too. Your studio could have had another Best Picture nominee this year. And I'm gonna say this. Other people, you may agree with me. You may not disagree with me. Um, Mikey Madison is great in Honora, and I think she totally deserved to be there. And I loved her performance. And I've seen Honora twice, so I really impressed. I've seen both The Substance and Honora twice. I do genuinely think that Demi Moore's performance is a little more challenging than what Madison did. I think that she did great, but I think other people could have done some of what Mikey Madison did. I don't think anybody could have done what Demi Moore was. Like this is a part that only I feel that like maybe another actress could have pulled off that she could played. I think there's more technical things that went into it. I was very sad when she lost the Oscar. I,
Well,
my heart dropped. I actually could not believe that. And good. I loved Honora. Honora is definitely one of the best pictures of the year, but I was
what
really surprised by that.
one thing I have to say about that is I've seen a lot of people complaining about a lot of people wanted Demi Moore to win, including me. But when Mikey Madison won, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, that perfectly aligns with the premise of The Substance. How they picked a young, hot actress and pushed Demi Moore to the side." I fucking hate that line of thinking. It's disrespectful to Mikey Madison,
Mm.
and uh, like I don't think it's that way at all. I don't think that's why Mikey Madison won because she was young and hot. I think she just because the entire year after seeing The Substance, especially when I seen that Demi Moore won the Golden Globe, I said she's a favorite for the Oscar. She has to win this. She's never won an Oscar before when she deserved it, so she should definitely get it for this one. And then when I watched Honora, I was like, "Oh shit, Mikey Madison's going to win," and she did. So I wasn't surprised, but I don't think it. I don't think Mikey Madison won, but just because she's younger and hotter. I think that's a bullshit.
I think
line
that
of thinking.
I think that's fair. Although I will say this on the other end of the argument, the saying that she did, because I don't think she did because she deserves to be there. But and this is an article I read that showed laid out a history that I didn't realize. The Oscars actually has a very long history of picking ingenues over established actresses.
Uh,
Whereas with the male category, if you align it up every year and look at it, it's the exact opposite. The Academy loves to give males the Oscars as they age and they become accomplished, and like a Leonardo DiCaprio win. The best actresses have historically gone to ingenues and to like younger people. Like it's very rare that an older actress wins. It is part of a pattern of Oscar history voting to always pick. Whereas if you even look, it's so skewed that what I think is like I forgot who was the youngest actor to win best. I think there's like I forgot who the actor is the youngest to win best actor, and it was like the youngest to win best actor. And then if you look at the best actress, that age and younger to win best actor is not just common; it's the norm. It's what they always pick. They always pick actresses who are younger. Like so they do have a history of passing up the more accomplished one. Whereas on the male categories, it's the exact opposite. Whereas the males, they rarely ever give it to like the young guy that's in his 20s or something like working his way up. They prefer to give it to males after. I'd have to bring out the article to show you, but they lined it out saying that she might have deserved it, but just be aware there is a pattern of the Oscars always picking the sexy ingenue and rewarding male actors for being accomplished. That it's not. There's I'm like there may be something to that.
there
However,
may be something. Yeah,
yeah, I'm like it's interesting when there's a ton of best actress winners who are in their 20s, and I think there's only one or two best actor winners who are in their 20s. And I was
but
like,
not to take anything away from Mikey
oh
Madison
yeah,
though, because
not to
that
take
was a
any
great
away.
performance.
I mean, yeah, it's a great performance. And then again, it's art. That's all subjective. Like it's a weird thing to even put these two in competition against each
Yeah,
other because movies are not sports. They're not designed as competition. They become competition when they get acclaim and get reward show, but you shouldn't be making a movie for awards anyway. And neither of these
yeah,
movies are Oscar bait, which is kind of amazing. Honora or The Substance. I was like, I was just a little sad. I was genuinely sad. I was very sad when Demi Moore lost, and I didn't expect. I sat there with a lump in my throat. I was like, that sucks, dude. Only because I'm like,
yeah,
Mikey Madison is going to have so many opportunities in the future
yeah.
for that award. Like he's going to get. I was like, I don't know if Demi Moore's ever going to get that. That was like the role of a lifetime, the role of her career.
Maybe this sets her up for some more juicy roles.
I hope so too. I hope so too because yeah, I
Because
think
I wanted her to win because it was Demi Moore, because I've loved her for so much of her career and she's done so many great movies. But I also wanted a horror film to win it, you know?
yeah, I did too. And regardless, it's an amazing accomplishment as a piece of acting. Oscar or not, that's not really what determines greatness, and that's not what determines what's. And I think The Substance is gonna stand the test of time. Honora will too, but I think The Substance is
Yeah,
gonna stand the test of time as one of the great body horror movies. I think this is very much a classic on our hands. And I think what's really indicative of how much of a classic it's going to become and how fast is how well received it was by horror audiences. Like
yeah.
you said, there's a couple people who thought the ending was a little over the top, but from the most part, I heard nothing but raves from horror fans and from across the aisle from horror fans who like their movies a little bit more serious and elevated or whatever to the ones who like the cheap, cheesier gore. It's one of those horror movies that was able to satisfy both horror audiences equally.
Oh yeah, and I kind of think it set a precedent between the Substance coming out this year and then Terrifier 3 being able to release unrated. I think that sets the bar a little higher for us to see a little more hardcore horror in the theaters.
Not only that, they were both big financial successes too.
Yeah,
One of them being unrated, and this one kind of surprised, but yeah, they're both major financial successes, and they're both uncompromising movies, movies that don't compromise their horror. And The Substance is a great horror movie because it has all of the great things that make cheap horror movies great, like more exploitation horror movies great, and it also has everything that makes art house horror movies great, which is not a
Yeah.
combination you see very often together.
And I
And
just love the overall feel of it, that the world it's created, because it's a world that feels almost real, but there's something kind of off-putting about it
yeah,
all the way up until the climax, and then you see that's what was off-putting about this world. This is where it was going.
yeah. But yeah, I love The Substance. I thought it was extremely entertaining, extremely engaging, very exciting, very shocking, very funny, very catch you off guard, beautifully done, artistic, good acting, just from top to bottom. It is a top notch horror movie. And like I said, we have a classic on our hands with The Substance.
And just exhilarating theater experience.
And I didn't even see it in the theaters, and I still think it's still it's still obviously to me it's like I don't know any like it's so obvious to me that it's the best horror film of the year that like is it even a question? It's The Substance. What else was as good of a horror movie as The Substance?
Yeah, it seemed like such an unfamiliar theater experience. Like I'm not used to seeing blood fly everywhere on a big screen like that.
Yeah, but yeah, our number one and our twos are identical for very similar reasons.
Yeah.
Never happened
I
before.
think we both had some pretty solid lists.
I think so too. Very yeah, very much
And I think
reflective of our tastes.
and I think both of us love this year of horror, and I think there's a lot of horror films that we enjoyed that weren't able to make it on our list. So what a great year for horror.
Yeah, definitely. So now that we've knocked that out, we can jump back into it. So on our next podcast in a couple weeks, you will hear us. We will give you updates on everything going on with the Dead Place. Lots of exciting news, lots to discuss, lots to talk about.
Yeah,
Exterior,
we've
post
we
production.
yeah, and we've been discussing it. You know, giving everybody updates and telling them what was going on between the fans and the cast and crew and everything. But we've just been little tidbits because, especially along the way, you don't want to give away everything that you're doing. You know what I mean?
Mm,
You don't want to tell them everything about how the sausage is made. But now that we're coming right up on the end, and we've had some few delays now I feel the need to get on the podcast on this next episode and just say the details of everything. Just spill the beans on exactly why it took this long and exactly what it takes to make a movie like we made.
yep, yep. Lots to discuss. So we hope you enjoyed our lists. And if you disagreed with our list or you think we're wrong, tell us why. Argue with us. Give us some viewpoints. Maybe if anybody makes a good point, we'll address it on another episode.
Yeah, tell us. I bet you if you tell us any that you think we missed, I bet they're a little bit farther down our list, pretty close to being in our honorable mentions. I bet
Yeah.
because we're pretty exhaustive in how many movies we watched to make sure we watched everything.
There are some movies that were good, but not like good enough for even for the like Heretic was the one that I enjoyed, but
Yeah, I thought for sure that one was going to make my list, but everything
Heretic
else was so good.
more. The Woman of the Hour is another really good one.
Yeah,
But the thing is that as a horror movie, I just couldn't put it as up higher as some of these other ones. Mads was one that made your list but didn't make mine, but it was also a really good one. Mind, Body, Spirit was another strong, but there was a lot of good stuff last year.
uh,
That's Humanist
the
Vampire
hum,
Seeking, Consenting
that's what I'm just going to
Suicide.
say.
That's another really good one, but you know what it is? I love that one. And if it were a little bit more horror and a little less sweet, it might have made my list. But it's such a sweet movie. It just
Yeah, it was so cute and beautiful.
yeah.
The set design on that movie was beautiful.
It
I
reminded me.
love
What else?
Blink Twice.
What's Blink Twice? Oh yeah,
the
that's the Zoe
Zoe
Zoe Kravitz
Zoe
one.
Kravitz, and You'll Never Find Me. Two characters, one location, riveting. Love that one.
See, that was on my honorable mentions, and I wanted to say something about that really quick. You'll never find me. Had had the last 10-15 minutes been a little bit stronger and not kind of what I expected, it probably would have made my top 10.
Uh,
Up to a certain point, I was absolutely riveted, and the ending was fine, but it for me it didn't live up to everything that came before it.
yeah,
Like
didn't match the build up. Yeah,
no,
that one that's what was special about it was the build up.
yeah,
And I have to mention one more, Mr. Crockett. Highly recommend that one. It's on Hulu. It's about a children's television show host, and he starts coming through the TV to kill the parents that are mean to their kids. It's awesome, and he has these creatures and stuff on his show, like he has a creature very similar to Cherry from the Pee Wee Herman show. But then when he comes through the TV to kill the parents, all the creatures from the show turn into monsters. So that one's a really good one.
we hope you enjoyed it. But until next time, folks, signing off.